Hey there. I've been thinking a lot lately because my birthday's coming up. I'll be turning 30, and that's a pretty big deal. And one of my I never thought I'd achieve this things was I haven't died yet. I'm alive, and I'm going to be 30 in 3 days. That could change in the meantime, but I'm pretty excited about that. The thing is, it makes me think a lot about the games I make. And the fact that because of how afraid I am, how afraid I've been of the idea of mortality pretty much my whole life, because of my illnesses and my mental health, most of my games don't allow you to die. I've written a fair number of smaller games, and I've worked on a number of games. In my most recent project that I did for the Cortex Prime Kickstarter Spotlight collections, I was a basically setting for Solarpunk, which the characters in it are pacifists. And there's really no metric by which you die. Most of the damage that's done is stun. And if a character does lethal damage, from the perspective of one of the flares, the main characters, they flare out. They leave. They become an NPC. The approach that I have these days to dealing with death has been really challenging because I don't want to see it. I play games like Shadowrun where you die in a hot second and it's violent and gory and exciting. And I played D&D a bunch where you die, and I can't bring myself to want it. And that's why, in turn, whenever you get hurt in any way, you regenerate. It's basically impossible for you to die unless you choose to. And choosing to die, to me, it's better. It's a better option. Combat is really weird, in turn, where you have all these different things that you can do because you just say it. You say how things happen. You say what the damage is. You say how the person gets hurt. And you don't get hurt because you can regenerate. You're super powerful. Nothing can happen to you unless there's a group. And if there's a group, you can choose between a couple of things to do. You can choose to run away and never come back. You can choose to kill everyone. Or you can choose to sacrifice yourself. And it doesn't detail how you die or how you go and get torn apart or whatever that is. You just are gone. And I don't know. I realize that I've never been big on dying in games. And that's because I have this fantasy of living forever. Not because the actual idea of being immortal is fun, but because the idea of dying out of my own control is really terrifying. Which makes the fact that I've been suicidal in my life even weirder. So, content warning, discussion of suicide further on from this point of the video. I have attempted suicide a couple of times. And that's part of the reason why I never thought I would live to 30. And it's not easy to remember that, but it is easy to understand now why those potential deaths stayed with me and why I might not want to have my life taken without my permission. I was in a small car accident at the end of last year. And I really thought that I had really screwed it up, you know? I fell asleep while I was driving and hit the interior wall of a truck, basically a big garage, a parking garage. And I bumped my head and I messed up my shoulder, but for a brief minute, I was asleep, hit my head, and all I could think as I woke up was that I wasn't actually alive, and I was just saying goodbye. There are a lot of games that approach death in different ways. There are tons of indie RPGs where dying is a part of the story. And I value that so much. I think it's so important for us to look at death and life and even stuff like suicide through a critical lens, as well as a lens where we explore it personally and emotionally. Sorry. So, last Metatopia I went to was right after my grandmother died. And it was a really difficult experience for me because of a whole bunch of emotional stuff tied with my grandmother. And then I played Storybox by Ronix beside Jason Morningstar and Amanda Valentine. And it was an awesome, awesome, awesome game. But the character that I played, his parents had recently died. And thankfully everybody at the table checked with me to make sure it was okay. But it allowed me to kind of safely explore my grief. And I found that really valuable. And then this past year at Big Bad Con, my grandfather died almost a year right after my grandma. And he died right before. And I went to the con and I played Dialect. I've wanted to play Dialect forever. And we ended up playing this really adorable game with robots. And it was super precious and very funny and cute. But also, everyone died. Everything died. And that was beautiful, but also really hard. Both of my grandparents were very formative for me growing up. Like, they were huge, huge influences on my life. But coping with their death was something I didn't do well. And it reminded me of something that I've expressed a lot and people get very angry at me for. And that is that I don't want people to grieve for me when I do die. The idea of leaving behind people having to clean up my mess or to deal with me leaving has honestly been the only thing that kept me from suicide. And I so want there to be a way for me to experience games where I can freely enjoy them without fear of death, or choose to engage with death as I want without having to explain why. And I think that one of the first steps to that is for me to finish and produce and release my games that deal with that acknowledge the desire to play a game that's not about dying, that's not you're gonna die so easily. I want that. I want that experience. And I want other people to have that experience. And I think the biggest thing that's sitting with me every game I play is I want to know that that's my choice. I want, even if it's a game that's designed for you to die whenever you want, I want to be able to say, no thanks. I'll stay alive, thanks. And I don't care about the destruction of people's narratives. If I don't opt into death in a game, even if it's Shadowrun, even if it's old school D&D, I'll never enjoy it. I guess what I'm saying is that I don't want to die. Maybe you shouldn't make me. Thanks for listening.